person's ability to fulfill a number of key functions and activities, including the ability to learn, think about yourself, the ability to feel, express, and manage a range of positive and negative emotions, the ability to form and maintain good quality relationships with others, and the ability to cope and manage change and uncertainty. And Lord, we living in the VI, we sure need that last one, right? I want you to take a look inside of your inner landscape and notice what you see. Think about the areas of your own mental health prior to what we fondly call Maria. Each of us is a unique and special being. As a result, what creates difficulty for one person may be experienced totally different by another individual. If you grew up in a household with siblings, you know what I mean. Have the same experience and have totally different perceptions of what happened. If you're working on a team, especially one that was post-Maria, you are and continue to live this reality. Mental health and mental health problems impact the way we think, the way we feel, the way we act, and the way we behave. We are, again, based on the theme, I am inviting each of you to believe in this order about the power and reality of what it means to tell your story. The theme implies an act of encouraging, which is defined, again, as the action of giving someone support, confidence, or hope. Say those words again with me. Support. Support. Say it again. Support.
Support.
Confidence.
Confidence.
And hope.
Hope.
That is the invitation and the challenge before you today. I want to thank you all for the hands that you have held, for transporting patients as nature raged, providing comfort to dialysis patients, providing comfort when diagnoses were rendered, regulating medication and giving and tending to wounds seen and unseen, for children needing medication in the middle of the school day, providing that on-the-spot cleanup when that magic moment of womanhood shows up as a surprise. Nurses are alchemists that operate in the worlds of the seen and the unseen. The dynamic of the human spirit, of vulnerability, of despair, of joy, expectancy, chemicals, pharmaceuticals, development, aging, environmental forces, and all human potential. You are alchemists engaged in the grand and minute manifestations of the human experience. Doctors are no greater than you in value and the expert skill that you bring. No less at all. But all of you are affirmation of skilled professionals that provide excellent medical and human care and transformation. I hope you heard what I said. Did you hear me?
Yes.
I need you to think about how you tend to your mind, body, and spirit connection. Implicit in this theme is the challenge, the imperative of the invocation and the invitation, asking you to question and think through the state of your own mental health and those who you walk with and consider colleagues in your professional journey. Your mental health care for yourself and for each other is part of the fuel to cross the bridge into deeper recovery from the individual and collective trauma of Maria. I know all of you know this whole notion of bacterial infection versus a viral infection, right? You know, don't over-prescribe antibiotics, all of that. Yes, I know. When you infect and inject each other with consequences that may have an impact on them, they ultimately impact the patient. Is that not right?
Yes.
I want you to think about the distinction between feedback and evaluation. I am not saying that those things are not significant in a healthcare environment where patient care, recovery, well-being, and life or death situations are at hand. What I'm talking about is the internal human slights at times of no good mornings. What are you happy about? Critiquing each other and judging perhaps another on personal appearance and choices that one may have made based on their inner landscape that you have not fully appreciated but only see in terms of the external reality. Encouraging mental health and wellness of each other manifests differently when it comes from a place of genuine human concern and empathy. As such, our stories are the foundation upon which quality mental health emanates in stressful environments or even when they're not. There is a transforming power in the telling of our stories. When you journey and journal regularly, have a friend group that creates safety in sharing and release, or perhaps you have recognized that professional support through a counselor or psychologist or pastor, you need a place for your own oasis of release, is a way and a place for you to tell your own story with care and affirmation. It changes us in the deep places of who we are. Those structures inside of us are the scaffolding of our identity and beliefs about ourselves. It is no different in reality for those in the faith tradition who are more familiar with the norm of testimony, right? When you go and you testify, you are telling your story, and you do it in order to be heard, to be acknowledged, to encourage, to inform, and to declare what God has done for you. This notion of telling stories is something that we are familiar with. We do it. Storytelling is a part of the tradition of this region, this land, culture, particularly of African descended people. Telling our stories provide personal agency. They anchor us in the reality of what has been, what is, and what we declare and are planning for the future. In our storytelling, we have language that becomes descriptors and signifies our interpretation of what has transpired. It frames our meaning making out of the experiences and opens the doors of understanding in the house, our house, this internal house that we live in. So what happens when the roof is blown off your house? Literally and symbolically. It's part of the storytelling. It becomes an important part of the narrative and the subtext, another chapter in our lives and how we choose to interpret it. I'm a survivor of complex traumas from childhood and adulthood. I didn't understand fully the potent impact of telling my story until I heard someone else tell their stories in a college class. I couldn't shut the door to my own house anymore, and that was a life-changing force for me. Another woman's story caused me to go inward and dare to take the covering off the places that I had shut off for so long and deemed that had no value and impact. What I didn't understand, and what I invite you to consider, is that perhaps, just perhaps, there are parts of your story that are unexamined, and you need to perhaps allow yourself to dare to open up. Because though you may question, why bother? I'm too busy, I'm a supervisor, I'm close to retirement, there's not enough time to get it done before my Monday shift begins. I'm from the States, I'm from off island, sometimes I don't even feel like I belong anyway. I feel isolated. I have better bonds with my patients sometimes than I have with my colleagues. You know, those who I visit in the homes and the children that I tend to in the schools, I sometimes feel a little different from those who maybe work in the ICU and the ER. So what does it mean to like have my own story and close it off? But I say, but it's your story. It's your story. It's your story. Telling your story begins with you. It is the most extraordinary story because it's your story. There is no one else like you, never has been, and never will be. I was raised by my maternal grandmother until I was about 5 years old in rural Jamaica. Not Kingston, not Montego Bay, rural Jamaica. Country, no lights or electricity or running water. Sounds like life after Irma Maria, huh? When I think about it, I was sheltered and clustered off and shut off from so many things. And when I came to understand and realize the power of early attachments in adults' long-time story, I realized that I never fully attached to my mother, who was stateside preparing the way. When you send for immigration, you send for the children to come to the States. And I came to Brooklyn. Those early origins of feeling centered and anchored in the early years had a profound effect on me later in life. How does your early origins manifest and show itself even now in ways for you that have been unexamined? The patterns in our life keep hitting replay until we dare to hit pause and stop button, until we hit pause and perhaps the stop button to venture in and to take a look, a gradual look, a deeper look, and to honor with compassion the response to your story of those places that have been unexamined. Research notes the impact of trauma on our well-being and functioning. I have shared with many groups and even on the radio that Irma Maria broke me open. Because I have lived experience full of long-lasting traumas, I didn't fully appreciate or anticipate the internal seismic shift that these two destructive realities of nature would leave in me, on me, and through me. I experienced 15 minutes of the most profound fear that I've ever known in my life. And I have known fear. But this was different. Death felt imminent to me. It was my perception of the threat that created the response. It is our perception of whatever the threat is that creates our response. Do we see it as a threat or do we see it as a challenge? The response is everything. We have all had our stories of the Irma Maria experience, the immediate aftermath, and this ongoing reality process. This interpretation is what impacts how we tell our story. Telling your story helps to integrate memories that are often floating in your mental atmosphere, looking to get anchored or released. And it shows itself in sensory ways when you get triggered by a cue that is similar to what you experience. I have had interesting conversations with folks after surprise Dorian showed up. And folks who said, oh, it was fine after Irma Maria, we're fine. But Dorian shook me up. Because folks had done the work. There was so much that you had to rally, so much adrenaline that was present, that there was never any time to process. There was never any time to tell the story. And because Dorian was the surprise, caught folks off guard. So telling your story helps you to change the ending. You begin to hear and see yourself in different and new ways. It can be corrective and directive. Telling your story allows for hearing and connecting to your own voice. Sometimes we are so accustomed to the ways that others tell our story so much that their story of us becomes our story of ourselves. It's Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and in the cycle of abuse, this insidious, toxic cycle of abuser to abusee brings light the potent impacts of this. The abuser's story often becomes real and integrated and warped and distorted for the one being abused. When the shift in the storytelling takes place, the abused can become a survivor. Language, how you choose to tell the story. A few months ago, I attended a resilience building workshop post-disasters sponsored by the Presbyterian Response Network. Allow me to share just briefly the essence of that time in abbreviated form. And I realized after I attended that, in fact, I've been using many of the concepts that they presented, but it was very abbreviated. And I meant to bring it. So when you go back home, they did this on index cards. It was very powerful, small little index cards. They had us get an index card, draw a line down the middle, front, diagonal, and down. 4 quadrants, okay? And we wrote 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. First quadrant. This is for you to have your quick reference of your own resilience response. Oftentimes we're not consciously aware and thinking through how do we respond, not just based on our story, but the patterns that are in us. So in the first quadrant, the question is, what is your stress response? How do you know when you are stressed? What are your own markers for you? Again, we're all unique and distinct, but all of you, all of us, and I've been very aware of this, how do you know when the stress for you is reaching a point that is problematic? That somebody else doesn't have to tell you, but your own cues are present and you know. It's like your mirror back to yourself. We know that the responses to stress, but particularly to threat, the way that we perceive it, you either freeze, I told you about my 15 minutes, you freeze, you fight, or you flight. What is your response? We all have an ongoing reaction to stress. If you're constantly frozen with stress, you ain't doing nothing, right? Ultimately, we'll catch up and you have to have strategies to unfreeze, to engage. If you're the one that always fighting, and I don't mean physical fight, but you're always in the battle because of your position, where you are, what have you. If you're constantly in the fight, there's a cost that you're paying. When do you bring it down so that you can exhale and catch the rest of you? If you're one who's always running, what's the cost of that? Because there is stuff that is happening that needs your attention. What can bring you back that you can pay attention? So my question is, what is your stress response? And it typically for all of us shows up in our emotions, in our thoughts, in our behavior, and in our spiritual selves. Each of you ought to have an opportunity to capture that for yourself. So that was quadrant 1. Quadrant 2, what are your in-the-moment go-to relievers? Patient, family, whatever it is. What do you do in the moment? Do you breathe? Got an affirmation? My sister here, she got an affirmation. What do you have in the moment? And if you've been listening to the show, hopefully you've gotten a few. But you ought to have your in-the-moment stress relief. That's yours. And at least 1 or 2 is your go-to. Maybe it's an affirmation. Maybe it's a scripture. Maybe it's a breathing cycle, a hold 4-3. Maybe it's the breathing squared. What is yours? Maybe it's a movement. Maybe it's a yoga posture. What is yours? You need to have them. So what is your response to stress? 2, what are your in-the-moment, like, emergency response for you? 3, who is in your life that is of value and support, that is your oasis space? Given all that we have all been going through, having oasis spaces is everything. Who is your go-to person that you can check in with? Maybe you come with an agreement, okay, Thursday afternoons, we're gonna have lunch. You got 20 minutes? I got 20 minutes? It's our time. Where's your spaces or space that you can have that affirmation of the journey? And the last one, what is your self-care lifestyle? So again, the 4 quadrants, right? The first one is how you know when you're stressed. What are your in the moment, like your emergency response? The third one, where's your squad or your posse or your place? That safe place. And the last one, the lifestyle. What are you doing in an ongoing way? Gathering with colleagues, heading to the beach, meditation, hanging with the grandchildren, getting off the island, baking, cooking, going out with your friends, whatever that may be for you, learning how to say no, setting boundaries, finding your voice, not always having to feel like you have to explain and justify every decision you make. What is your self-care lifestyle? That's an ongoing thing that is a part of the resilience building part. So, you got those 4? All right. I've had the unexpected blessing of being this co-host of WSTA Rotary Wellness Wednesday since June of 2018. I didn't plan this. I didn't plan this. But need, skill, and I believe a divine inspired opportunity made it happen. With my co-host Paul Domingue, we have invited the listening audience to push away some of the boundaries of the closed off places and explore wellness, trauma, loss, grief, creativity, complementary ways to heal, meditation, breathing, counseling, leader stress, and communities within our communities, and so much more. So here's my shameless plug, okay? Shameless plug. From Wednesdays from 10 to 11, after the morning show with Addie Otley on WSTA, we have been doing this. And because, people got lives, right? Everyone can't be living at 10 o'clock and hearing. We are now on a variety of podcast platforms. I was like, oh, we gotten so fancy. And so if you type in Rotary Wellness Wednesdays with an S to Google, to iTunes podcast, to iHeartRadio, to Spotify, I was like, what? We are there, and we have loaded about 21 of them. And it is just extraordinary. I actually been listening as a consumer, not even as the co-host, because I'm like, some of this stuff is actually really good. So I invite you to check it out and to listen in. Yes, Rotary Wellness Wednesdays with an S. You can put it into Google. I actually did it last night and it'll pop up. If you have an iPhone and you hit the podcast icon right now and you put in the search bar and you put that in, it'll pop up if you listen to Spotify. So we are there, and the goal was to figure out ways to spread it beyond for those who can't listen live, and folks can also listen live online. We recently did a show to reflect on what are our own personal takeaways. And even though I have these degrees and experiences, I told you that Maria broke me open. I've been as authentic as I know how to be. There's no value in hiding the journey. I've come to understand, as I told you, the power of somebody telling their story, which freed me up when I was in college. I have learned that the sharing of those places that often create vulnerability for us are the places that create magnificent and extraordinary breakthroughs. So because I have learned that and felt it for myself, it is who I am. And so I have learned that. So let me share a few takeaways from this year-long journey of doing these shows and listening to Virgin Islanders in Fruit Bowl and Kmart. Dr. Hall, let me tell you. That's like, okay. All these stories, hearing the difference at just opening up this telling of our stories, which is essentially what we are doing. Number one that I've learned, it's important to break silences. We know as West Indian people, Caribbean folk, and right, shut it down. But some of that stuff is actually toxic, and it will get passed on amongst each other, to your patients, to your children, to yourself. Some of it is cultural, but some of it is the human need to be protected and to hold those places that are vulnerable. But over time, that toxic buildup becomes insidious and becomes long-term and becomes a part of who you are. So the importance of breaking silence. Two, the need to explore our stories in spaces that are affirming. And Maria has been teaching many in different ways the importance of ongoing recovery, but the importance of exploring in places that are safe. Three, that breathing and the power of the breath is a potent tool for release, control, renewal, anchor, replenishment, anxiety, and personal impact. So even right now, I want you all to take a nice deep breath in with me, and we always breathe in through our mouth. We breathe in through our nose and blow out through our mouth. Nice deep breath in. And exhale. Deep breath in. And exhale. We have been doing that on the radio. Like, what? On the radio. And individuals have been practicing. There's some folks who are doing this with their staffs before they start a staff meeting. So you have the shared experience, bringing in thoughts and, oh, I'm rushing, and you create the shared moment that helps to anchor in the moment. Different kinds of breathings and all of that. So that breathing is actually something that we all can do. That trauma changes us, number 4. And the question has been, how has it changed you? Number 5, that thoughts are energy. Thoughts are energy. It's the bridge between our minds, emotions, behaviors, well-being, and soul. And that thinking about your thinking is transformative. I'm going to say it again. Thoughts are energy. Thinking about your thinking is transformative. I'm going to say it one more time. Thoughts are energy. Thinking about your thinking is transformative. I'm going to leave that thing. 5, that was 6. Grief and loss are part of the living and breathing reality of being human. It's unique, it's distinct, it's private, and yet it has communal impacts. You all know this better than I, even though I've had my own journey, as you have walked the road with parents and patients and your own self. My father passed away earlier this year, and I share this on the radio. It's different knowing a thing than experiencing a thing. Profoundly different. You can support another in their journey, but my God, the vulnerability to go through it for yourself, it's profoundly changing. Grief and loss, an important part of the process. 7, the strength used as a necessary cultural survival tool can also be a mask to hide behind. VI Strong's a powerful reality, but there's also VI vulnerability. and how can we hold the two, because you need both. And 8, that a Black West Indian woman and a man raised Caucasian man Paul on an island can explore paths together about the human journey of recovery as we honor the unique and distinct reality of being and going through with respect, joy, companionship, and discovery. And then lastly, that Bob Marley's 3 Little Birds is healing balm for the soul. We start each show with 3 little birds, and I'm telling you, some good Bob Marley will do something good for your spirit. In conclusion, the story that is yours is worth sharing. Start with kindness, compassion, and the openness to discovery, reflection, and revelation. So as you move forward from this convention, consider your individual and collective stories. What is needed to add to more chapters of your story with wellness and mental health? Perhaps you need more individually and collective breathing breaks, meditation, better eating, professional counselor, forgiveness, journaling, a checkup, reframing your thought life, or even simply saying good morning to your coworker and actually meeting it. Each of you needs each other in the lives to move forward in this recovery journey as we all move forward. Healthy nurses create healthy communities. I close with a poem, one of my favorites, Our Deepest Fear, by Marianne Williamson. And it reads as follows. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We are born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to go fast, go alone, says the African proverb. If you want to go far, go together. Many blessings on your individual and collective journey.
Good afternoon. Let's hear another round of applause. I'm one of those that tune in occasionally to the 10 o'clock Rotary presentation.